The decorative pillows formed a precise border down the center of Gabriel Hart's bed, absurdly elegant and completely necessary. I lay on one side in an ivory knit top, black thermal trousers, and socks, fully clothed except for my boots. Gabriel lay on the other in a navy Henley and dark trousers. We were two sober adults who had spent the day calling each other darling for an audience and the night preventing part of his family's estate from collapsing on that audience. A floorboard shifted in the corridor. Neither of us moved. Lenora Hart's room was 3 doors away. Then Gabriel turned toward me. His face was mostly shadow, his gray-blue eyes catching the faint light from the rain-streaked window. Lumi. My real name crossed the pillows more intimately than any endearment we had rehearsed. His hand moved across the sheet and stopped inches from the border. He didn't touch a pillow. He didn't touch me. I couldn't tell whether he was awake, testing the rules, or asking for something he still hadn't found the courage to say in daylight. So I gave him no answer. After a moment, his fingers curled back toward his palm. He withdrew his hand and turned away. I remained awake, my pendant warm beneath my fingertips, wondering how a professional agreement had brought us into the same bed, and why the sound of my own name now felt like the most dangerous part of it. 16 hours earlier, Gabriel had found me in Hartmere's West Service corridor with a moisture meter against the wall and a chalk pencil between my teeth. "You're going to say no," he said. I removed the pencil. "That saves time." Freezing rain ticked against the narrow windows. 3 weeks of inspecting Hartmere had taught me that the estate amplified weather and family tension with equal efficiency. Water moved through its concealed cavities. Resentment moved through its drawing rooms. Gabriel wore a dark sweater over a pale shirt, understated enough to disguise the fact that his family owned the building, the hotel company operating it, and several smaller historic properties whose repair records occupied half my temporary workroom. "My grandmother intends to announce a relationship this weekend," he said. "Mine." "With whom?" "A woman selected for her usefulness to the family." "Does she know?" "She knows Lenora's preference. She hasn't accepted anything." That softened one concern and sharpened another. "And where do I enter this?" "I need you to appear as the woman I'd been seeing privately." I stared at him. "I told you that you'd say no." "I'm deciding whether I need a more complete word than no." His mouth almost changed shape. Gabriel rarely smiled outright. He seemed to consider expressions another system requiring careful load management. He followed me into the temporary conservation workroom. My blue report folio sat beside photographs of cracks, damp staining, and patched plaster. I closed it before turning to him. "My contract is with Hart Heritage Hotels. Your family already assumes a 26-year-old woman near wealth arrived by a route other than expertise. If this becomes public, my work becomes evidence against me. I won't let that happen." "You can't promise what other people will infer." "No. But I can separate the arrangements legally and in writing." "What exactly are you trying to stop?" "Lenora wants to corner me before the succession discussion. If I arrive with someone credible, someone she can't dismiss as a temporary convenience, she loses the ability to announce a future I didn't choose." The answer was specific enough to sound complete. I would later understand how carefully he had built that impression. "How long?" "Until Sunday afternoon." "Press?" "None invited." "Payment?" "No." "My conservation fee?" "Entirely separate." "My report?" "Yours. Unedited." "Sleeping arrangements?" His eyes held mine. "Separate rooms." "Public touch?" "Only if I ask first." "And if either of us ends this?" "It ends immediately." "No invented sexual history. No false name. No implication that my professional access came through you." "Agreed." I took a blank page from my notebook. Then I write the terms. He pulled out a chair and waited while I drafted them. The social performance was unpaid, my invoice covered conservation work only, I retained sole control of my findings, every touch required permission, either of us could terminate without explanation, confidentiality could not prevent me from defending my professional conduct. Our agreed address in front of your family, I said. Something we won't use privately. Darling? You say that as if you've never used it sincerely. I haven't. I looked up. That wasn't a request for personal disclosure. It was an honest answer. I wrote darling in the margin. Gabriel read every line before signing. I signed beneath him and placed the original in my blue folio. He photographed it and sent a copy to Owen Price, the family's general counsel and trust secretary. Then he forwarded me his original written request so there could be no later dispute about whose idea this had been. The first tire sounded on the gravel drive. Gabriel glanced toward the window. They're early. Then one more rule. He waited. If I ask whether this weekend creates a risk to my name or my work, you answer the question I'm actually asking. Something unreadable passed through his face. Yes, he said. We reached the entrance hall as the first doors opened. Hartmere had been built to make arrivals feel smaller. The stone floor stretched beneath a double-height ceiling, and the winter garden beyond the hall turned the gray afternoon into cold silver light. Staff moved efficiently around wet luggage while relatives stood still and expected efficiency to happen around them. Rosa Alvarez, Hartmere's house manager, accepted 3 dripping coats at once. No one thanked her. Lenora Hart entered last. At 74, she carried age as evidence of ownership. She wore black wool and pearls, and her gaze reached me before Gabriel completed the introduction. The conservator, she said. Lumi Bennett, I replied. Hartmere's independent conservator. And Gabriel's companion, apparently. For the weekend, Gabriel said. Lenora's attention shifted between us. He dislikes sweet wine, sleeps poorly before board meetings, and refuses to admit when he is cold. Which habit have you found most inconvenient? It was a trap built from ordinary details. A fabricated intimacy would require improvisation. The truth did not. He forgets lunch when he's reading structural drawings, I said. Then blames the drawings. Gabriel looked at me. I blamed the kitchen schedule once. 3 times. A few relatives smiled. Lenora didn't, but she accepted the answer. I took 2 wet coats from Rosa before they slid from her arm. You're a guest, Lenora observed. I'm also standing beside a coat rack. Rosa hid her amusement by turning away. Have you seen more dampness along the east wall? I asked her. Below the library windows, she said. Worse since noon. Across the hall, Owen carried sealed folders into the glass-walled library. One bore Gabriel's name. Gabriel's shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. I waited until Lenora turned toward the stairs. What's in the folders? Routine trust material. Your face considers it unusually interesting. Before he could answer, Lenora looked back. Miss Bennett, dinner is at 7:30. You'll attend as Gabriel's guest. I'll attend as both, I said. Her eyes cooled by a degree. Gabriel offered me his arm after she turned away. Is that necessary? I asked. No. Then save it for when it is. He lowered it without offense and followed me toward the winter garden. By 1:30, the freezing rain had thickened over the glass roof. I worked from the winter garden to the roof access stair, taking infrared readings and checking moisture levels while Gabriel compared my marks with old drainage plans. The building told the truth in gradients. Cold spread behind plaster before stains emerged. Water found old repairs and made their weaknesses visible. Hartmere's west side showed the neat geometry of the original box gutters, but a newer drawing redirected one run toward an interior cavity. "This route doesn't match the masonry," I said. Gabriel crouched beside the plan. "The gutter should continue north." "It should. The cold pattern turns east." He studied the infrared image, then the patched cornice. "I missed it." There was no excuse in his voice, only recognition. "Most people would have looked at the repair record and trusted it. You didn't. Buildings have no incentive to protect the reputation of whoever filed the paperwork." That earned a brief, real smile. Rosa appeared at the far doorway. "Water's coming through 2 ceilings in the guest wing." Gabriel folded the drawings. Lenora approached behind her, speaking to Owen about seating arrangements. "May I take your coat?" Gabriel asked me quietly. "And put my hand at your back?" "You may take the coat." He waited. "Not the hand." "Understood." He eased the wet camel coat from my shoulders without touching my waist. Lenora saw the gesture from across the room and appeared satisfied by what she believed it meant. Owen stopped beside Gabriel. "I'll need you in the library for the Alliance Annex." I turned toward him. "Alliance?" "Trust terminology," Gabriel said. "Routine." The word landed beside his earlier answer and refused to fit. Then the guest wing alarm sounded. We abandoned the family performance and ran. Water had entered the electrical cavities of 3 rooms by the time we arrived. I cut the inspection short, ordered the rooms emptied, and sealed the wing until an electrician could test the circuits. Lenora objected that half the family had already unpacked. "Wet wiring is indifferent to luggage," I told her. Rosa rearranged the remaining rooms. One staff apartment had a damaged radiator. Another had been opened to repair personnel. Owen took the library office. By 4:30, the safe room list had narrowed to one uncomfortable conclusion. "Gabriel's suite," Lenora said. "Miss Bennett can stay there." Gabriel's expression hardened. "I'll use my office." "You will not," Lenora replied. "Not unless this relationship is less convincing than you've suggested." The hallway became very quiet. I looked at Gabriel. "I'll inspect the suite." It had one large bed, an antique settee too narrow for anyone taller than I was, 2 bathrooms with locking doors, an interior latch, and windows facing the storm. The room itself was safe. The situation required a different kind of assessment. "You can have it alone," Gabriel said when Lenora and Rosa had stepped outside. "Let her conclude whatever she wants." "And walk into tomorrow's meeting having failed the reason you asked me here? That is no longer your problem." "It remains my decision." His jaw tightened. "I don't want you trapped by the weather or my family's expectations." "I'm not trapped if I define the conditions." I faced him directly. "We sleep fully clothed. We change separately. Pillows divide the bed. No contact without a direct question. Either person can end the arrangement at any moment." "Yes. If I become uncomfortable, you leave regardless of what Lenora thinks." "Yes. And you don't thank me as if I'm doing you a favor." "I am making a tactical choice with known terms." He held my gaze. "All right." I built the line myself, placing decorative pillows from the headboard to the foot of the bed. Outside, the road authority advised against travel because of worsening black ice. Rosa closed the guest wing and brought extra blankets. We had barely finished when a message arrived from Lenora summoning us to dinner in the room beneath the concealed gutter. I changed into a deep burgundy long-sleeve dress and low black boots. My pendant rested at my throat. Gabriel wore a charcoal suit without a tie. The formal dining room glowed with candles and polished silver. Beyond the winter garden doors, freezing rain struck the glass in hard little bursts. The family had restored its surface calm with impressive speed. Lenora seated me beside Gabriel. His position requires more than affection, she said midway through the first course. It requires understanding what the Hart name asks of everyone attached to it. I'm accustomed to buildings asking things of people, I said. Names are usually less structurally significant. Gabriel lowered his wineglass. He hadn't drunk from it. Neither had I. A faint line above the winter garden doors caught my attention. I watched it while Lenora continued speaking. The crack ran through ornamental plaster above a heavy cornice. It had not been there at 3. A bead of water appeared where the ceiling should have been dry. I stood and crossed to the wall. "Lumi?" Gabriel said. I took the compact meter from my bag and pressed it to the plaster. The reading climbed, then climbed again. "Rosa, cut power to this wall." Several faces turned toward me. Lenora remained seated. The room was inspected recently. Not for the drainage alteration above it. There's no need to alarm everyone. The crack extended another inch with a soft, tearing sound. "Gabriel," I said, "clear the room now." For a fraction of a second, the whole table waited to see whose authority mattered. Gabriel rose. "Everyone into the stone hall. Leave everything." Lenora's hand tightened around her napkin. He looked at her. "Now." Chairs scraped back. Gabriel directed relatives toward the entrance hall while Rosa ran for the electrical panel. I checked the exit path and kept everyone away from the winter garden doors. A server stooped to retrieve a dropped phone beneath the table. "Leave it," I said. "It belongs to." "Leave it." He hesitated. I crossed the room, took his arm, and redirected him toward the hall. The final guest cleared the threshold. I counted faces, then checked the doorway. 11 seconds later, the cornice came down. Waterlogged plaster, timber fragments, and lengths of rusted metal support crashed across the abandoned table. Crystal shattered. One end of the cornice struck the winter garden doors hard enough to fracture a pane. Silence followed, enormous and brief. Then everyone began speaking. "My mother's case is in there." "The silver." "Was anyone?" "No one re-enters," I said. A relative stepped toward the debris. I stretched red safety tape across the doorway and looked directly at him until he stopped. "Rosa, confirm the power is isolated." "Gabriel, keep everyone behind the stone line." "Owen, record the evacuation time." "No debris moves until it's photographed." Gabriel didn't ask for justification. "You heard her." I photographed the collapse from each accessible angle, including the water path and the torn support. The server's phone lay beneath a slab of plaster where his head would have been. When I returned to the hall, dust covered the hem of my dress. Lenora stood very still. Gabriel addressed the family and staff. "Lumi is directing the emergency response. That includes me. If she says an area is closed, it stays closed." In 3 weeks, he had accepted my technical corrections in private. Now he placed my judgment above his own in front of everyone whose approval he was supposed to need. It changed the room. It also changed the danger of what we were pretending to be. The collapse pattern showed that the water had traveled through a concealed route. We couldn't design reliable supports until we found the source. Rosa brought a brass service key from the house office. "There's a passage behind the paneling. Old staff route. The access hatch hasn't been used in years." She unlocked a narrow door beside the pantry, then remained outside to coordinate the repair crew. Gabriel followed me into the passage with a flashlight. The corridor was shoulder width, lined with damp masonry and old service pipes. My burgundy dress was hardly ideal inspection clothing, but the structure did not care about wardrobe. Water glistened along one wall. I traced it upward, checking joints and chalking the safest points. A displaced brace blocked the path. I placed one boot over it and tested my weight. "May I steady your waist?" Gabriel asked. "Yes." His hand settled lightly at my sides. Warmth registered through the fabric, sharp because he used no more pressure than necessary. I stepped across. He released me the moment both feet were stable. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Neither of us pretended the contact had meant nothing. Neither of us used it to claim more. At the old access hatch, I found the frozen box gutter outlet. A later patch had redirected overflow into the plaster cavity instead of toward the exterior drain. Ice had blocked the intended route, and the storm had filled the concealed space until the cornice supports failed. I photographed the alteration and marked anchor points for temporary shoring. "This wasn't caused by your inspection," Gabriel said. "No. But that won't stop someone from suggesting it if the report becomes inconvenient." "I won't permit that." I glanced at him. "You keep promising control over other people's behavior." He absorbed the criticism without answering. We ordered controlled drainage, shoring from the sound masonry, and continuous monitoring as the temperature changed. By 11:15, the temporary supports were in place. Gabriel and I sat in the conservation workroom with black coffee while repair personnel moved between checkpoints. He had changed into dark trousers and a navy sweater. I had exchanged the dusty dress for charcoal work trousers, a cream blouse, and a cardigan Rosa found in the staff supply closet. We compared moisture readings every 20 minutes. "My father would have covered the table and continued dinner," Gabriel said. I looked up. He believed nothing private should interfere with the company. Not exhaustion. Not grief. Not the fact that he hated the life chosen for him. Gabriel turned his coffee cup between his hands. He surrendered every decision and called it duty. And Lenora admired him for it. She respected the result. What happened to him? He died believing that if he had endured one more year, he could protect everyone beneath him. The repair crew adjusted a support beyond the glass doors. Gabriel watched them work. "Lenora wants to sell the smaller properties," he continued. 3 hotels, possibly 4. She calls them inefficient. The staff call them home. If I have authority, I can stop it." His fear was credible. So was the obligation he felt. That made the missing information more dangerous, not less. "What does tomorrow decide?" I asked. He was silent long enough to answer without words. Then he said, "How much authority I'll receive." That isn't the whole sentence. "No. Tell me the rest." His gaze dropped to the readings between us. "There are succession conditions. Family expectations. Things I should have rejected years ago." "What things?" His mouth opened. For one moment, I thought he would finally give me the shape beneath the language. Instead he said, "I thought I could gain enough authority to protect the properties without letting Lenora dictate my private life." "You thought you could control both outcomes?" "Yes." Control is useful when you're stabilizing a ceiling. It becomes something else when you apply it to people. "I know." "No. You understand the sentence." I kept my voice low. Knowing it requires acting differently. He looked at me then, stripped of his family composure. "I'm afraid refusal means handing the company to people who will dismantle it. I can forgive fear more easily than a choice someone makes for me." The words remained between us. His eyes shifted toward my blue folio. He knew our memorandum was inside. He knew I had asked for the truth before agreeing to the performance. He gave me his motive. He did not give me the mechanism. At 1:30, the supports held steady. I logged the final reading, sealed my notes, and returned to the suite with him. We changed in separate bathrooms. I put on the ivory knit and black thermal trousers. Gabriel changed into his navy Henley. We rebuilt the pillow line exactly as I had arranged it earlier. "Still comfortable with the agreement?" he asked. "Yes." "Are you?" "Yes." We turned off the lamps. At 2:18, the floorboard shifted in the corridor. Gabriel turned toward me. "Lumi." His hand moved across the sheet and stopped inches from the pillows. I stayed silent. Darkness could make ambiguity feel profound, but I would not answer a request he had not defined. If the moment mattered, it could survive daylight. He withdrew his hand without touching me. His breathing eventually deepened. I remained awake long enough to hear the freezing rain soften against the window. At dawn, the pillow line was untouched. Gabriel opened his eyes at 7:40 and found me already sitting at the edge of the bed. "I heard you," I said. He became completely still. "Last night? When you said my name. I thought you were asleep." "I know." He sat up but kept his side of the pillows. I wanted one moment where I wasn't speaking to the roll. "What were you speaking to?" "You." "That doesn't tell me what you wanted." No, his voice was rough with exhaustion, but his answer was clear. "I wanted to reach for you. I didn't because you hadn't agreed to be reached for." The simplicity of it affected me more than a practiced declaration would have. "At least you understood that much," I said. A knock summoned us to the emergency review before either of us could say more. The glass-walled library held trustees, relatives, Rosa, Owen, and 2 senior employees. The storm had tapered to sleet. Photographs of the collapse lay beside my moisture readings and the altered drainage plan. One trustee gestured toward me. "The consultant Gabriel brought has documented the damage." Gabriel's expression changed. "Lumi Bennett," he said, "is Hartmere's independent historic building conservator. She identified the failure, ordered the evacuation, preserved the evidence, and prevented injuries. Her decision is to be recorded in the minutes under her full professional title." The correction cost him only a moment of social ease, but he spent it without looking at me for approval. Owen amended the record. Afterward, I found Gabriel in an empty side corridor. "You didn't need to do that," I said. "Yes, I did." "Because we're pretending?" "Because it's true." He stood close enough that I could see the fatigue at the edges of his eyes. He did not move closer. "May I kiss you?" he asked. There was no audience. No need for performance. No alcohol blurring either answer. "Yes." He leaned toward me slowly enough that I could change my mind. I didn't. When only an inch remained, I closed the distance myself. His mouth was warm and restrained, then firmer when I touched his jaw. The kiss carried the intimacy we had refused to counterfeit, hours of shared work, the service passage, his hands releasing my waist, my name crossing the bed. He ended it before restraint became pretense. I kept my hand against his jaw for one heartbeat longer. Then I lowered it. "Does the succession meeting create any undisclosed risk to my name or my report?" His eyes sharpened. "Nothing changes the written terms," he said. "That is not what I asked. No condition can make your report part of the arrangement." "And my name?" "Lenora may try to use the relationship politically. I won't let her characterize your work as anything but independent." Again, a promise of control. Again, a narrow answer shaped around the truth. "Don't let me learn otherwise from someone else," I said. He nodded. The kiss remained real. So did the evasion. By Saturday afternoon, the winter garden had become a controlled work zone. Red tape crossed the doors, temporary support tags hung from the shoring, and repair personnel moved along routes I had approved. I drafted preliminary restrictions at the library work table. The winter garden would remain closed. Drainage repairs required independent oversight. No cosmetic work could precede a full cavity survey. Lenora read the first page standing over my shoulder. This was an isolated weather event, she said. That phrasing would reassure insurers. It would also be inaccurate. The storm caused the collapse. The storm loaded a concealed drainage alteration. If the alteration remains out of the report, it remains in the building. Hart Heritage could offer you a broader commission. I'm not negotiating the description. Her attention cooled. Everyone negotiates descriptions. Plaster doesn't. Owen entered carrying a thick packet. On its cover, in precise black type, were the words succession conditions, proxy and alliance. He set it in front of Gabriel. I waited until we reached the covered terrace, away from Lenora and the repair crew. Is this relationship evidence in a vote over company control? Gabriel looked through the terrace glass at the damaged room. Lenora intended to announce a family alliance before the vote. If everyone believed I had made my own choice, she couldn't proceed as if my consent were irrelevant. That still isn't my question. He pressed one hand to the cold stone railing. The vote affects how much authority I receive. Your presence disrupts Lenora's strategy. Is there a written connection between your relationship status and the authority? He held my gaze. Lenora uses every private choice as leverage. Gabriel. She wanted to choose for both of us. Bringing you was a way to stop her. A true answer, positioned to conceal a larger one. I thought of his father, the vulnerable properties, the employees whose futures Lenora regarded as numbers. I understood why he wanted the authority. I also understood that compassion could become the easiest tool for manipulating me if I stopped requiring facts. Was I evidence? I asked. You were a refusal. That is eloquent. It is not precise. His face tightened. I closed my notebook. I'm accepting your answer provisionally because the building still requires decisions and because I believe the threat you described is real. There will not be a third chance to explain the same omission. I understand. I hope so. That evening, Lenora invited me into the formal sitting room. The fire was lit, though half the estate remained cold from isolated circuits. You're capable, she said. More capable than Gabriel expected, I imagine. You would need to ask him. Hart Heritage could absorb your report into its internal preservation office. We could give you an advisory title across the portfolio. Reporting to whom? The property director. Gabriel. Initially. And my conclusions? Aligned with institutional priorities. There it was, prestige shaped like subordination. You're offering me less authority over my own work and calling the scale an improvement. I'm offering you access. I already have access. It's called a contract. Lenora's eyes settled on my pendant. A partner to Gabriel would need to understand that personal loyalty and institutional loyalty cannot always be separated. A competent institution should survive independent facts. You're young enough to believe that. I'm old enough to know what happens when moisture is painted over. I left before the conversation could be converted into negotiation. Gabriel found me in the breakfast corridor. Sit beside me tomorrow, he said. If you don't, Lenora will behave as if my wishes are still available for assignment. Am I being used as evidence? You are no longer a strategy to me. The answer hurt because it contained feeling and avoided history. Was I one when you asked? He said nothing. I adjusted the cuff of my cardigan. I'll attend on 3 conditions. You don't speak for me. You don't use my report. You don't ask me for a public romantic decision. Agreed. And I'm moving out of your suite. The reopened staff apartment was small but safe. Rosa gave me the key without comment. Gabriel carried nothing, offered no objection, and stopped at the threshold. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "If the terms remain intact." They will. Behind the glass library walls, Owen and Lenora organized Sunday's trust disclosure packet. Under procedure, Gabriel's request, our boundary memorandum, and my separate professional invoice were prepared for review. I did not know that yet. I entered the library Sunday morning in a charcoal-tailored suit over my burgundy blouse. My camel coat and instrument bag waited in the workroom. The blue folio remained under my hand. Black ice coated the drive. The road was still closed. Trustees sat along the glass walls. Family members occupied the center table. Rosa and several senior employees stood near the open doors. Gabriel sat beside me in a dark Sunday suit. He had not touched me when we entered, and I had not asked him to. Lenora began with the succession packet. "The weekend has introduced evidence relevant to Gabriel's proposed challenge," she said. "Evidence that should be considered carefully." She placed 2 documents on the polished table. The first was Gabriel's original request asking me to pose as the woman he had been seeing. The second was my conservation invoice. She aligned them side by side. The distinction between professional access and personal performance appears less clear than Miss Bennett has suggested. The room changed around me. Glances moved from the request to the invoice, then to my face. The boundary memorandum was somewhere in the packet, but Lenora had chosen the order of revelation. Before Owen could display the document proving the performance was unpaid, she had already created the inference she wanted. One relative frowned. Another looked embarrassed for me. A senior employee lowered his eyes. Gabriel stood. The proposal was mine. Lumi received no payment for the social arrangement. Her invoice covers 3 weeks of independent conservation work and nothing else. Owen opened the packet. The signed memorandum confirms that separation. Lenora did not look at him. A formal distinction does not erase practical entanglement. My work existed before the request, I said. My voice was quiet enough that the room had to settle to hear it. My findings remain under my control. Gabriel turned toward me. What I feel for Lumi changed, he said. The arrangement became real to me. A current of attention tightened around us. He had been asked to defend my professional integrity. Instead, frightened and exposed, he reached for romantic truth as if truth could repair every kind of damage. "Lumi," he said, "tell them whether you believe that." A real answer, demanded in the worst possible place. I looked at him. "You agreed not to ask me for a public romantic decision." Recognition struck his face. "I'm sorry. I am not answering that question." Lenora's silence carried satisfaction. I placed my palm over the blue folio. "I will answer the question relevant to my presence. What was this performance intended to change?" Gabriel remained standing. Lenora replied for him. "Gabriel's succession." "In what specific way?" "The trust grants the controlling voting proxy, successor designation, and attached equity only upon his acceptance of a family-approved alliance." For a second, every sound in the library seemed to move farther away. I turned to Owen. "Is that a written condition?" "Yes," he said. "It is contained in the proxy and equity schedules." "Was it in effect before Gabriel asked me to appear as his partner?" "Yes." I looked at Gabriel. He did not attempt another careful sentence. "Did you know?" I asked. "Yes." The answer arrived cleanly at last, after it could no longer give me a choice. My appearance had not merely disrupted an unwanted announcement. It had challenged the formal condition governing his proxy, equity, title, and control of the company. My credibility made the relationship plausible. My contract made my presence explainable. My reputation had been exposed to exactly the inference now spreading through the room. He had preserved both options: defeat Lenora's chosen alliance while remaining eligible to receive the succession package. And he had asked me to carry the reputational risk without telling me what my performance was designed to secure. Gabriel came around the table but stopped several feet away. I should have told you. Yes. I believed I could keep the conditions from touching you. You brought me here because they touched me. My feelings are real. They may be. I closed the folio. They do not retroactively create informed consent. No one moved. I stood. You do not get to make me the honest part of a plan you kept dishonest. His face lost the last of its composure. I turned to Owen. Under the immediate termination clause of the memorandum, I am ending the social agreement now. Recorded, he said. My preliminary report is withdrawn until an independent client representative is appointed. Hartmere will receive only the sealed emergency restrictions required for life safety. No one alters, quotes, or circulates the draft. Owen nodded. Understood. Lenora leaned back. Withholding a report after receiving a fee may create a different impression. The fee covers work completed under a contract requiring professional independence. I am not withholding emergency information. I am refusing to deliver a final report into a compromised reporting structure. I placed the sealed restrictions on the table. The winter garden remains closed. The guest wing remains partially restricted. No debris is removed without documented authorization. Those instructions protect every person in this building, including those who have tried to discredit me. I did not plead for their approval. Approval from people willing to confuse an invoice with consent had no corrective value. In the workroom, I packed my camera, flashlight, chalk pencil, infrared thermometer, moisture meter, and inspection notebook. I secured the blue folio and put on my camel coat. Gabriel entered but stayed near the door. I'm sorry, he said. Not for being exposed. For deciding that my purpose gave me the right to limit what you understood. The apology was precise. It was also late. Do not follow me, I said. Do not contact me through work. I won't. He did not ask me to stay. He did not touch me. He stepped aside so I could leave. Rosa met me in the entrance hall. The road is still closed. The black ice would keep me at Hartmere until the authority reopened the hill route. I'll wait here, I said. Behind the glass library wall, the formal vote resumed. I sat on a stone bench with my coat fastened and my bag beside me. I had no intention of returning to the meeting. Through the glass, I could see Gabriel standing at the end of the table. Owen opened the library doors. Whether for procedure or ventilation, I didn't know, but Gabriel's voice carried into the hall. I am submitting a signed statement, he said. It accepts sole responsibility for proposing the deception and withholding the succession condition from Lumi Bennett. Lenora remained seated. The trustees turned toward him. The statement releases Miss Bennett from every confidentiality clause connected to this weekend. Her conservation invoice, findings, emergency decisions, and final report are independent of the social arrangement. The arrangement was unpaid and initiated by me. Owen took the signed pages. Gabriel continued. When the arrangement was exposed, I asked her for a personal answer in front of this meeting. That placed her under additional pressure after she had expressly refused public romantic use. I acknowledge that as a second violation of her terms. He did not look through the glass. That mattered. If he had searched for me, the statement might have become another performance, another costly gesture awaiting a reward. Instead, he addressed the people whose record he had corrupted and accepted consequences without knowing whether I was listening. He asked the independent directors to assume authority over Hartmere's emergency repairs. He requested written protection for staff positions during the review and appointed no family member to supervise my work. Lenora folded her hands. You are making decisions in anger. No, Gabriel said. I made the earlier decisions in fear. These are corrections. The proxy gives you the power to prevent the sales you claim to oppose. It also requires me to accept your right to approve my private life. I reject it. A trustee asked him to clarify. Gabriel did. He rejected the controlling voting proxy. He withdrew from successor consideration. He forfeited the equity attached to the succession schedule. He resigned as Director of Property Operations, effective immediately. Owen recorded each action. Lenora's voice reached the hall. You understand that the residence at Hartmere is tied to your office? Yes. You will lose it. Yes. And Miss Bennett has given you no indication that any of this changes her decision. Gabriel's answer came without hesitation. Her decision is not mine to purchase. Something in my chest tightened, but I remained seated. He had spent the weekend insisting he needed power to protect the buildings and employees. Now he asked the independent directors to establish those protections without him. It was less satisfying than personal control and more honest than claiming no one else could be trusted. Owen confirmed that the resignations and forfeitures were final. Lenora could not restore the bargain without a new vote and Gabriel's renewed consent. My phone displayed a road alert at 2:58. Hill route open. Caution advised. I stood, lifted my bag, and walked out through Hartmere's stone entrance. Gabriel did not follow. 3 weeks later, an independent director's representative sat across from me in my conservation office. She carried no Hart surname and reported to no family trustee. Her written authority separated repair oversight from succession, operations, and public relations. I read the appointment twice. When this structure is executed, I said, I'll reinstate the report. It already has been. I confirmed with Owen through formal channels before returning to Hartmere. In daylight, the estate looked less theatrical. Temporary supports held the dining room opening. The concealed gutter had been exposed, and independent repair personnel followed the anchor points I had marked during the storm. Gabriel was absent. I completed the cavity survey and submitted the final report without softening or retaliation. It documented the concealed drainage alteration, the storm loading, Lenora's request to characterize the failure as isolated weather, my evacuation order, the 11-second interval before collapse, and every repair required before reopening. The board accepted it in full. Their minutes confirmed that the social memorandum was unpaid and unrelated to my professional fee. They appointed me to lead the stabilization phase under independent authority. Separate corporate records confirmed that Gabriel's resignation, proxy rejection, equity forfeiture, and move from Hartmere remained effective. He had sent no gifts. No flowers appeared at my office. He did not use Rosa, Owen, or an employee as a messenger. He offered no private explanation while my report remained vulnerable. Only after the board published its acceptance did an email arrive from his personal address. Lumi. Your report is secure, and I no longer have any professional authority connected to Hartmere. If you are willing, I would like to ask you for one real date. I will accept no answer and no reply. Gabriel. I read it twice, then waited 3 days. I agreed to meet him at a public cafe near one of my preservation projects. The meeting was not yet a date. I made that distinction in my reply, and he acknowledged it without negotiation. He was already seated when I arrived, wearing a dark sweater and no trace of the Hart executive uniform except his composure. He stood when he saw me, then waited for me to choose the chair opposite him. You look different, I said. I live above a bakery now. Everything I own smells faintly of cinnamon. That may be an improvement. I'm undecided. I ordered coffee. He did not begin with an apology designed to control the tone. What are you doing for work? I asked. I accepted a position as a project engineer with an independent preservation firm. No executive title. No family authority. I inspect masonry and argue about drainage. You always wanted glamour. Apparently. What happened to the properties Lenora planned to sell? The independent directors froze the sales pending a staff impact and preservation review. I provided the records I had, then removed myself. He told me the salary, the loss of residence, and the practical consequences of forfeiting his equity before asking anything of me. Not to dramatize them, but because hidden circumstances had once made my consent defective. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He did not reach for motive first. Because I wanted to preserve both outcomes. I wanted the authority, and I wanted to stop Lenora from choosing my partner. If I told you the formal condition, you might refuse. I decided that protecting the properties justified controlling which risk you were allowed to understand. And now? Now I know that protecting an outcome is not the same as owning another person's choices. I knew it intellectually before Hartmere. I failed when it cost me something. Your resignation doesn't prove love. No. It doesn't obligate forgiveness. No. And one accurate explanation does not rebuild trust. No. I studied him. He let the silence remain mine. What exactly are you asking for? I said. One dinner. Or a walk. A date with no family audience, no company motive, no performance, and no expectation that you feel what I feel. You're asking to begin, not resume. Yes. Trust would be rebuilt through repeatable choices. You understand that? I do. I looked through the cafe window at the late afternoon light on the brick building across the street. I had come prepared to leave if he defended the old decision, minimized the risk, or presented sacrifice as payment. He had done none of those things. One date, I said. His expression warmed, but he didn't reach across the table. Yes? Yes. At my pace. Your pace. I finished my coffee, then stood. He rose as well. Where would you like to go? I glanced toward the preservation project 2 blocks away. We can walk. Should I ask about Hartmere? No. What should we discuss? Anything ordinary. He opened the cafe door and waited without guiding me through it. Several dates later, I made a reservation at a modest inn on the coast. I made it in my own name. Soft rain followed us from the parking area to the covered entrance. I wore an oatmeal sweater, dark jeans, and my pendant. Gabriel wore a charcoal field jacket over a dark sweater and carried one overnight bag. There was no family dinner, no sealed succession packet, no professional invoice, and no hidden condition attached to where either of us slept. The clerk handed the room key to me. Upstairs, I unlocked the door. The room was small and warm, with a dark window facing the ocean and one wide bed beneath a sloping ceiling. Across the center of the bed, the inn had arranged an unnecessary row of decorative pillows. Gabriel stopped at the doorway. He did not interpret the reservation. He did not assume the past had granted him access to the present. He waited while rain moved softly across the glass. I met his eyes. Then I crossed to the bed, lifted the middle pillow, and placed it against the headboard. I left the open space by my own choice. Lumi, Gabriel said at normal volume. This time, he knew I was awake. This time, I answered.